I originally wanted to be a nuclear physicist, and I think it was just seeing how all the nuclear physics, the atoms, the protons, the neutrons and the electrons all sort of slotted in together and made this entire world that we lived in. And I found that fascinating. My name is Jacinta Denveston and I'm the Director of First Year Studies for Physics at the University of Melbourne. Physics to me is understanding how the world works. And by world I mean the universe. So we look at everything from the beginning of the universe, like cosmology, and the structure of the universe, so astrophysics, right down to the smallest things that we know about, like electrons and leptons and quarks, which we would call particle physics. And then there's everything in between. So it could be looking at quantum computers, it could be looking at how materials are structured and how they can be manipulated to create new materials and new things. And it feeds into medicine and engineering and all sorts of fields. Okay, so why should you study physics? From my experience of studying physics, I loved the way that I got to understand how things worked. And that was a real passion for me. And it's not just how a small thing works, it's how the biggest things work and everything in between. It also gives you problem-solving skills. It teaches you how to analyse and critique and seeing everything come together is so exciting and so interesting, and then applying it to your world, to a world that you could only dream about and yet we know it's true. Like, say for example, special relativity. I mean, that sounds like science fiction and yet we know it works, we've seen the evidence. So I think that's all pretty exciting. There's so many problems out there, real world problems, and while physics can often be thought as a very theoretical, esoteric subject, we certainly put our hand into solving these problems. For example, climate change. Understanding energy is a big part of understanding climate change and how to put that back on track and fix our world. Okay. So when you come into first year physics, you'll have an opportunity to get together with a small group of students and work on problems together. And then lastly, you'll come into our labs, which is a lot of fun, and work with your fellow students to discover, unpack, understand some of the physics concepts that you'll see in lectures and really start to explore and develop your laboratory skills. It's challenging, but if you put in the work, if you go to your classes, if you take the time to really learn what's going on, then I think it becomes a really interesting and rewarding subject. It's not a subject that you can learn out of a textbook. It's not a subject that you can just remember various words and so on. It's a subject that you need to apply what you've learned. And if you take on that idea when you come in, then I think you'll find physics very enjoyable. So if you're thinking of physics as a career, there's so many options available to you. There's the traditional research, there's teaching, which is a fabulous career path and an incredibly rewarding one. We often think that physics is just either teaching or research. And yet there are many of my friends who I studied with have gone into banking. Finance is a huge area where physicists are taken on. Bioinformatics is another one because we know how to deal with big sets of data. So bioinformatics is quite a common place now for physicists to go in. IT and technology is also a big area because we understand how the processes, the equipment works, and also the software, and being part of that software development again is a big field for physicists to go into. Yeah, really, I think it's the sky's the limit. You're getting some amazing skills that you can take anywhere. There's so many big issues facing us, particularly in the last year or two, and physics is absolutely there on the front line helping us to solve these problems.